think 50 million barrels of oil were discovered in Burkina. Well, what people don't say is also there's like a lot of gold coming out of that country. So there's a dual narrative that is pretty unfair to the African continent. Africa was the highest return on investment for IFC World Bank around the world.
Wow.
28% IRR during those years. We're talking about 2004 to 2012. Until the lion learns to write, tales of the hunt shall glorify the hunter. The economists who said, who wrote on the front cover, the hopeless continent, we were all shocked, you know. Those who have kind of engineered this whole narrative certainly are the ones who have been benefiting from it. But here is the reality.
When we talk about capital, it gets a little more bit deeper than money itself, right? So it becomes belief. It's what people think where value is at, where innovation is happening, where risks are. But when you talk about this in an African context, a lot more different set of words come into play, like charity, for example, right? So what is your views on that? And let's just get started with that.
There's a bit of a history to that, right? There's this whole stereotypes of a lot of those NGOs to raise money that they'll see, an African with, those big tummies and flies around their eyes, etc. And the problem is that an image speaks 1,000 words, and it has stuck in people's psyche, subconscious, and so on. And it's very hard to fight or to beat. The same way as when you hear, I remember 25 years ago or a bit less, the economists who said, who wrote on the front cover, the hopeless continent, we were all shocked, But here is the reality, why is it that anytime when people associate engagement in Africa, it's considered as charity? Why do people think that those guys are so poor, they can't, we need to help them save from extinction, almost,
Yeah.
And people tend to forget that Africa is 1.4 billion people, 60% of the arable land, 50% of the global gold reserve, 70% of the platinum, 35% of the lithium, right? In 10 years, right, 10 to 15 years, there'll be 2 billion Africans, right? That's 7 out of 10 fastest growing economies on the planet over the past decade were from Africa. You don't hear that in the media, right?
Yeah.
And funny also, you hear about charity when you know that actually the capital inflow to Africa is less than the capital outflow to Africa, right? So somehow there is a large group of investors somehow that are deploying capital and that are getting much more than what they're putting in, right? And somehow, people always say, you can take the case of Captain Traore in Mali, recently in Burkina Faso. People say, oh yeah, Burkina Faso is probably one of the top 10 poorest countries in the world.
Yeah.
But why then don't people want to leave them alone and let the guy move? So it means that somehow there is more than what people say or what the media wants us to understand, right? And guess what? I think 50 million barrels of oil were discovered in Burkina. Well, what people don't say is also there's like a lot of gold coming out of that country. So there's a dual narrative that is pretty unfair to the African continent. And at the same time, when you think of it, who does it benefit? When there's something so good, right? And you want to keep it for yourself. And you tell everybody, don't go there. Does it ring the bell? Yeah. And maybe there's a bit of something like that. It's not even maybe, for sure there is, right? And I've worked with multinationals. Did you know, for instance, I was with IFC World Bank.
Yes.
And during my tenure there, for 8 years, I think Africa was the highest return on investment for IFC World Bank around the world.
Wow.
28% IRR during those years. We're talking about 2004 to 2012. You'll never see that in the news. Yeah. And then you'll think of charity, right? So, yeah, it's a bit of a double standard and it has to stop. And luckily, that's the whole point about rebranding Africa, right? That's the whole point about this thing about until the lion learns to write, tales of the hunt shall glorify the hunter. And there is also a responsibility for African people and friends of Africa to tell the story the way it is, right?
Yes.
Think of one thing also. You have this whole brainwash who had led people to think that, 20 years ago, people look at Chinese, call them the bootleggers, right? And then the next thing they know, they put out DeepSeek and then take out all the multi-billion-dollar investment. So there is some form of preconditioning of the opinions so that you can go and buy in a direction, or so that you don't invest in a direction and let some people invest and make the return, because when everybody goes there, so there's going to be less for you. It's like food, right?
Yes.
So yeah, this charity thing luckily is changing dramatically. But those who have kind of engineered this whole narrative certainly are the ones who have been benefiting from it, right? And as sadly as it may be, what we're seeing now is also a huge dynamism, and then that is actually happening.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's changing.
Yeah. Do you think this gap in narrative is what is stopping innovation to coming into limelight?
It's not. So actually, no, it's not frustrating innovation.
Okay.
It's frustrating capital deployment, right? Global economy is based on a model called the scarcity economy, like the fear that there won't be enough for everyone.
Yes.
Which for sure will change soon with AI coming in and a lot of more transparency and efficiency in markets. Think of this. Invention is mother of necessity.
Yes.
Think of M-Pesa, right? I was involved in the very early days, and I invested actually even before that on the first ever in mobile banking, mobile payment solution. And this was way before WeChat. Africa became a global leader when it comes to mobile payments, while people were still and are still writing checks, paper checks, right? So yes, that was an innovation that was called by the fact that we had a problem to address. There was not infrastructure. Banking penetration was largely not sufficient, but everybody had a mobile phone. So, okay, we need to find a solution where we could use this device to effectively transfer funds from one another, because if I have to wait to send you cash or to find you to send a check at the other side of the country, right? So there's a lot of African innovation. Did you know, for instance, that there's this inventor in Congo who's been able to power a house just by plugging cables onto trees? Right? There's this inventor in Zimbabwe who actually has been able to build an electric car, but not just an electric car where you recharge. You actually don't even have to recharge the battery.
Wow.
Yes, we have that. Right? You know that there's an inventor in Namibia, a 16-year-old, who effectively has built a phone that does not need antennas or anything like that. Do you hear those stories? No. Why?
That's the question we should be
why,
asking.
Right?
Right.
But then the next kid who's going to do a social media platform will be all over the world.